Rick thinks about his past, and how he wanted to become like Yamato. This meant becoming an adventurer to try and defeat Kitaerarete. Unfortunately, his mother thought it would be too dangerous, and his father wanted Rick to stop believing in fairy tales. One day Rick found some hope as the doctor discovered that Rick had a marker, indicating that he had an inherent skill. People with the marker are extremely rare, and Rick was one of them. Rick was stunned to learn that he could have an incredible power like Yamato, but Rick was told that it wasn't something a person could manifest through training. Rick was still excited, and he was told to just relax and wait for his skill to come out. Rick couldn't have been any happier, and Rick decided that once his skill manifested, he would proudly declare to his parents that he was going to be an adventurer. As the days pass, Rick's friend asks if his skill manifested yet. It still didn't show up after a year, but Rick kept his spirits up and thought that it would reveal itself when he wasn't a kid anymore. Eventually, Rick became discouraged, and he was told that there were cases where people with the marker never manifested their skill. There are still a lot of adventurers who don't have any skills, so his friend suggested that he become an adventurer anyway. They told Rick how much money he could make, but money wasn't why Rick wanted to become an adventurer in the first place. One day Rick's mom was glad to hear that Rick was hired as a receptionist at a guild. His parents were proud of him for finding a stable job, so Rick accepted that this was his life now. Rick went about doing his new job, but he still continued testing to see if his skill had manifested. Years and years passed and Rick's parents aged, but Rick never stopped reading about the legends of Yamato. His daily life was as a receptionist, but Rick never gave up on his dream. One day Rick explained to Alicia that monsters had been driven out of their lairs, so they had been wandering into town. Things are starting to get a bit dangerous, and some new quests will be announced soon. They were mostly low-level monsters, so Rick assumed they would be D-rank quests. An adventurer named Zaid was a friend of Rick, and Zaid revealed that he was promoted to B-rank. This marked the moment when a person could make a living just by adventuring. Rick congratulated Zaid, but he couldn't help but be upset with himself. Rick had done the same job for 14 years, and he was gone nowhere. Meanwhile, Zaid had been promoted several times. Rick didn't have much to complain about because his life was pretty stable, but Rick couldn't help but think how far he would have gone if he had decided to become an adventurer. Just then Rick heard screaming as a giant monster appeared in town. Rick was shocked because it was incredibly rare for a mid-level monster to be there. Rick heroically tried to protect a girl, but she just told him to get out of the way. This girl destroyed the monster, and Rick was shocked as this girl simply thanked him for trying to save her. This was when Rick first met Rionette, and Rionette revealed that she was an adventurer. Rick assumed that Rionette was a B rank, but Rionette was not. Then Rick was sure that Rionette was an A rank, and Rick was super excited because he had never seen an adventurer fight up close. Then Rick was stunned when Rionette said she wasn't an A rank either, and she was actually an S rank. Rick was incredibly nervous because S rank are the top of the all. Rick had a question to ask her because Rionette is an S rank, and Rick hoped that she wouldn't laugh at him. Rionette explained that laughing would not be a concern, because since the 9 years that had passed since she was 8 years old, she had never laughed. Rick just told everything, and revealed that he always dreamed of defeating Kitaerarete. On top of that, Rick also has an inherent skill that hasn't manifested yet. Rick explained that he was 30 years old, so Rick asked her if she thought there was still time for him to become an adventurer. Rionette acknowledged that Rick had courage, because he tried to save her, but Rick was 30 years old, and he never trained his magic reserves. Rick already knew about this limitation, but Rionette explained that it is not just hard to develop magic resistance after not training it when you were young, it's basically impossible. Adventurers need at least some magic reserves, so Rionette was confident that Rick had no chance of making it as an adventurer. Rick kept a positive attitude as always, and he thanked Rionette for the reality check. Rick could finally stop clinging to the dream he should have given up years ago. Rionette apologized, but Rick said he needed to hear that. Rick talked non-stop hoping to mask his disappointment, and jokingly asked her to have a meal with him. Rick was shocked when Rionette accepted his offer, and she made plans for them the next day. The next day Alicia could tell that Rick was in a good mood, and Rick excitedly told her that they should work their hardest. Zaid arrived, and the happy Rick excitedly gave him his quest. Rick couldn't believe that he was having dinner with a girl like Rionette, and he realized that his life wasn't so bad after all. Just then people began scrambling as a monster had appeared, and Rick's good mood was ruined. Rick got worried when he spotted Rionette, but he remembered that she could handle herself easily. Then Rick was startled when several more monsters appeared, but AnimeT told them that she would handle them. Rick knew that he would only get in the way, so he stood aside while AnimeT started destroying the monster. She tore them to pieces, and Rick was amazed to see what an S rank could do. AnimeT finished up the last monster, but AnimeT became concerned when she sensed something. AnimeT had a flashback to a horrible memory, and she collapsed because of the terrifying magical energy. Another monster arrived to attack them, but Zaid appeared out of nowhere to rescue them. Some other adventurers showed up, and Zaid explained that the guild put together an emergency quest. Then adventurers worked together by using their amazing abilities, and they started annihilating the monsters. Rick thought he had already given up on becoming an adventurer, but watching this group fight made Rick realize that he was still jealous of them. AnimeT warned him that it was too dangerous there, but Rick said they would be fine because Zaid is a B rank. AnimeT was still terrified, and revealed that a B rank wouldn't be enough to fight the threat that was nearby. Rick was shocked, and AnimeT revealed that the threat was a dragon. AnimeT said that every time she feels a dragon's magic, she loses control of the magic within her body. Rick was sure that a dragon would never appear there, but he was quickly proven wrong. A gigantic dragon appeared before them, and even Zaid couldn't believe that one would appear in a human town. Everyone was taught at the Adventurers Guild that anyone lower than a B rank should never try to fight a dragon. One guy from the group panicked and tried to attack it, but it quickly became very clear that there was no way they could fight the dragon when it pushed them back with just the force of its wing. The group decided to run for their lives, but they were stopped by the dragon's barrier. They aren't able to destroy the barrier, so they realized that the dragon is not planning to let them get away. Zaid gave up as he believed their lives were over, but Rick shockingly stepped forward. Zaid reminded him that he was just a receptionist, and there was nothing he could do. It turned out that Rick also thought they wouldn't survive, but if he at least stood up to the dragon, then he might at least be able to spend the last moments of his life as an adventurer. However, after coming face to face with the dragon, Rick realized that they wouldn't even be able to put up a fight. Rick was terrified, but he could still feel a fire burning inside of him. Rick thought he had given up on becoming an adventurer, but this feeling inside of him made him realize that this was actually the way he wanted to live. Then Rick bravely launched the rock at the dragon, but it didn't do anything. Zaid was inspired by what Rick had done, so he told the other adventurers that they couldn't let a receptionist show them up. Then newly inspired adventurers fiercely attacked the dragon. The powerful dragon used its fire breath on them, but Zaid temporarily turned everyone to iron to protect them. The blast was too powerful, so everyone was injured, and Zaid determined that this was really the end for them. AnimeT hated herself for not being able to fight the dragon, but it was too late anyway, as the dragon prepared to end them all. Everyone had given up, but they were stunned when Rick emerged from the rubble. Rick became very serious, and Rick vowed that he would make his dream come true no matter what. AnimeT was horrified when she could only watch as the dragon crushed him. Just then a voice declared that Rick had acquired a skill, and everyone was stunned when Rick lifted the dragon's foot. No one could believe their eyes, and they couldn't even recognize Rick. Rick didn't look like himself at all, and there was so much magic overflowing from him that it was actually visible. Rick realized that his inherent skill must have just manifested, and he wondered what took it so long. Rick gained a ton of confidence, so Rick told the giant dragon to give him everything it had so he could test out his new skill. The dragon launched attack after attack, but Rick blocked them all. Eventually Rick fought back, and his attack was so incredibly powerful that it blew a hole right through its barrier and the dragon. Everyone including Rick was stunned by what just happened, and Rick humbly said that wasn't so bad just before he collapsed. A while later Rick woke up in immense pain, and AnimeT informed Rick that every magic circuit in his body was destroyed. Rick had been asleep for an entire week, and he was shocked to hear that AnimeT sat by his side the entire time. Rick couldn't understand why, so AnimeT revealed that she was waiting so she could invite him to join the party she belonged to, the Orichalcum Fists. Rick didn't believe her, but AnimeT explained that they share a common goal, and that is to defeat Kaiser Alsapiet. Rick was even more shocked by this part, because it confirmed that Kaiser Alsapiet actually exists. Rick fought with courage alone, so AnimeT was confident that he would be able to grow stronger and fight alongside her group. AnimeT guaranteed that he would become an adventurer, and this was the first time anyone ever said anything like that to him. Rick broke down from the sense of relief, and he wondered if it was really okay for him to try and become an adventurer. AnimeT assured him that it was okay, and Rick couldn't hold back tears. Back to the present, Rick's numbers were announced. and AnimeT congratulated him on officially becoming a fully qualified adventurer. Rick credits his mentors for teaching him, and he thanks his old self for never giving up on his dream. Lynx congratulates Rick on passing and reminds him about the drink they're supposed to get. Rick thinks it is a great idea, but he is shocked when Lynx expresses an interest in meeting his party and asks to visit them. Rick's face makes it clear that he is hesitant, but he agrees to let him meet them. A while later, Lynx is on his way to visit, but he thinks it's strange that Rick told him to his most powerful equipment. Lynx arrives at the designated location, but Lynx doesn't believe he is at the right place because it looks like the Demon Lord's castle. After ringing the bell to the place, Rick comes to greet him. Lynx noticed that there were no monsters on his way to this place, so Rick explained that monsters don't go near there. This makes Lynx wonder why he needed to bring armor if not for monsters, so Rick explains that the armor will keep him out of a coffin. Then Lynx is introduced to the girls of the group. Lynx hopes his own daughter will end up happy like Kitaerarete, but he is shocked when Kitaerarete uses a level 6 spell by just saying the word boom. Rick rescues Lynx from being obliterated, and he scolds Kitaerarete for using magic in the castle. Lynx is stunned to hear that she just wanted to play, and AnimeT explains that she will have to deduct the cost of repairs from Kitaerarete's food budget. Kitaerarete begs for forgiveness, so Rick decides to spend some time with her so she can calm down. Lynx is left to relax for a while, and he marvels at how huge the place is. Lynx goes to see Mizet outside, and Mizet explains that making crazy weapons is a hobby of his. Lynx tries out his latest weapon, and Mizet instructs them to put magic into it while pulling the trigger. The powerful recoil sends Lynx flying backwards, and the shot does major damage. The recoil was a bit too much, so Mizet decided that he would have to make some changes to the weapon. Lynx is stunned by the weapon, because if it were mass-produced, then it would change war forever. Lynx is beginning to see just how crazy this place is, and he meets Brufston next. Being surrounded by books calms Brufston, and Lynx wonder if this intellectual orc is also a member of the party. Brufston says that he has read most of the books in his library, but he hasn't had much time to read recently because he has been training Rick. Brufston offers to give Lynx a training lesson as well, so Lynx eagerly accepts. Brufston likes the look that Lynx has in his eyes, as he senses the same light he sees in Rick. A while later, Rick is shocked to hear that Lynx went with Brufston into the forest. Rick is terrified because he knows how dangerous that is. Then we see the terrified Lynx screams, because he thinks his life is about to end. Lynx goes flying off a mountain, and he says goodbye to his wife and kids. Luckily, Lynx lands safely on the food that AnimeT has gathered for dinner. AnimeT notices the weights attached to Lynx and determines that this was Brufston's doing. Lynx confirms this as he explains that Brufston told him to run down a slope so steep, it was basically a cliff. Lynx is sure that he wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for AnimeT, and she explains that Brufston ended Rick's life the most out of everyone that trained him. Lynx is so terrified by that statement that Lynx pretends he didn't hear it, and Brufston arrives to continue their training. Afterwards, Lynx is relieved to still be alive, and he tells Rick that Brufston was only supposed to give him some light training. Rick warns Lynx that he can't believe any of them when they talk about easy training, but Brufston arrives to point out that he can just bring people back to life if the training eliminates them. Rick reminds him how fragile lives are, but Kitaerarete is tired of all the talking and just wants to play again. As the guys wait for dinner, Lynx wonders how close Rick has gotten to AnimeT. Rick explains that the relationship isn't like that, especially because he is too old. Lynx shocks him when he explains that he and his wife are 20 years apart in age. Lynx gives Rick some words of encouragement as he explains that all that matters is how they feel about each other. That night, everyone enjoys the feast AnimeT made, and they all compliment her. AnimeT goes to get some wine, so Lynx tells Rick that this is the perfect time to go and help her so they can get closer. Rick rushes off to help AnimeT, and Lynx asks to learn more about Rick's inherent skill. Brufston reveals that Rick's skill is a type that is activated by certain conditions. This means that Rick is not able to activate it himself. However, thanks to the training, Rick now stands within the realm of S rank, even without his skill or weapons. Rick's skill is called Reckless Soul, and if it were to activate, he would surpass everyone, even the other members of Orichalcum Fist. Brufston has a question for Lynx as well, because he works at Central. Brufston would like to know about the magic stones, known as the 6 jewels. They are the ones in the legends of Yamato, and Rick explains that their goal is to defeat Kaiser Alsapiet. The 6 jewels are magic stones that open the door to the place where Kaiser Alsapiet sleeps. The 6 jewels are activated every 200 years and they should be emitting a large amount of magic right at this moment, as they have reached that part of the cycle. Lynx always questioned if the stories were real, but hearing them talk like this makes him confident. Lynx has no information about the stones right now, but he promises to check the confidential department to see if he can find something. Just then Rick asks if Lynx has any other good advice. Rick tries to help Rionette like Lynx said, but she is great at everything and doesn't need much help. The next day a new adventurer wonders why she has to clean the guild when she has the ability to defeat monsters. She spots Bruston asking to take on a certain job, but he is denied. Bruston can't understand why, because the job's danger level is only 82 and they can handle it easily. The girl adventurer thinks this group looks pretty strange and she thinks about how she has never seen the guild master be so different from adventurers before. Rick uses his receptionist skills to see that they can take on this job as long as they have 2 A ranks in a 4-person party. Bruston asks if they can have some help finding a 4th person, so the guild master agrees. He reminds the girl named Ray that she wanted to go on a quest with a higher danger level, but she is a bit hesitant to join the strange party. The guild master assures her that they are great adventurers, but all Ray sees is a talking orc, a little girl and some old guy. Ray really wants to do a quest, so she gladly decides to lend them her strength. On the quest, the group makes it clear that they are searching for a magic stone. Lynx told them that it should be in this area, and Ray wondered if it was worth a lot of money. The stone is quite valuable, but it is dangerous to handle without proper precautions, and it is capable of drawing monsters to it. Ray isn't worried, because she is confident that she can handle any monster. Ray is only an F rank right now, but she is sure that she will be an A rank in no time. Rick reveals that he just reached E rank, and Ray realizes that Rick is some late starter old man just like she thought. Back at home, Rionette hopes that the others are okay. Mizet reminds her that Bruston is with them, so they should be fine. Mischief Mizet uses his gadgets to try to get a peek at Rionette. Rionette stops him and destroys his machine. Back with Rick, Bruston determines that they are getting to the lair they are looking for. Ray is terrified to see a wyvern, and shocked that they are looking for a wyvern lair. Ray warns Bruston not to get too close to the wyvern without a plan first, but Bruston just doesn't seem concerned. Bruston tells the ferocious wyvern to move, and he sends it flying across the forest, and Bruston tells Ray that the plan is just to knock down any monsters he sees. Ray fears that his attack will just cause more wyvern to appear, but that is actually what Bruston wants. Bruston tells Rick to get Ray to a safe area so she doesn't turn to ash, and Ray is horrified to hear how much danger she is in. Rick takes Ray to an open field and reminds her that she is supposed to be strong. Just then a wyvern gets tossed right next to them, and we see that Alyssarette and Bruston make quick work of a group of wyverns. Ray is shocked by how far they are throwing the wyvern, and she is startled when a giant red wyvern appears before her. Even an A rank would have a hard time against one of these, so Ray thinks they should run. Rick agrees that they should run away, but there is something he wants to check. Rick refuses to back down even if the odds are against them, so Ray decides that she will have to fight by his side. Rick can see how determined Ray is, so Rick allows her to back him up. Ray begins preparing a spell to protect Rick, but she is utterly stunned when Rick absolutely destroys the wyvern. Rick celebrates, as this confirms that he really is strong. The next day Ray is exhausted, and the guild master explains that nothing good ever happens when the Orichalcum Fist shows up. A look back to the day before shows Ray wondering what they were going to do with the wyvern corpse. Their answer was pretty surprising, as Rick explained that Rionette was going to cook it for dinner. Ray can't believe that anyone would eat a wyvern, so the guild master explains that people say that members of the Orichalcum Fist are the strongest in the continent. Guild master hopes that Ray's experience with them made her realize that she shouldn't be going on dangerous missions, but actually just motivated her to train harder. Back with our group, we see that they were successful in obtaining one of the 6 jewels, called the Red Flower. It has an incredible amount of magic in it, and it should help them find the other jewels. Alyssarette wants to be the one to activate it, but everyone decides against that because she would just blow it up, as she does to everything. Mizet is the one to do it, and a map of a large city pops up. The city is called Heractopia, and combat flourishes in that country. They are also famous for their Colosseum. Then we see a fight taking place at this Colosseum, as the girl is announced the winner. Then we learn that 400 years ago, King Alexander built the Colosseum. The king held fighting competitions, and king himself fought with no weapons, but with his fist. Alexander reigned as the undefeated champion of 10,000 fights. Then people from all over the world came to either watch him or fight him. This small kingdom grew exponentially, and it is now known as the Kingdom of Heractopia. Rick and the others arrive at this kingdom and stare at a statue of Alexander, who is known as the first king. Fighting for entertainment is a huge business here, so being a fighter is a popular occupation. These professional fighters are called fist fighters. Bruston wishes he could have sparred with King Alexander at least once when he was alive, but Rick fears that they would have destroyed the kingdom. Our group tries to get information on the 6 jewels, but people are terrified of the Bruston. Just then they notice some bald guy bothering a girl. Bruston decides to ask them for some information, but the creep says he is not intimidated by orcs, because he is a fighter. Bruston straight up tells this guy that he doesn't look very strong, so the creep challenges him to meet him in an alley. Bruston takes the guy up in his offer, and easily beats him. The guy's name is Gold, and the girl's name is Melisha, and they offer to answer any questions. Rick shows them the red flower, and explains that there should be another one of these gems in this kingdom. They are amazed by the magic emitted from the stone, and our group is shocked when they say they have seen one like it before. They can't remember where, so Rick begs them to think harder. Just then they are interrupted by the announcement parade of the King of Fists tournament. It is a fighting tournament to determine the champion fighter. It will take place in 2 months, and it gets over 500,000 audiences every year. A guy named Kelvin is a 5-time champion who has won the last 3 tournaments in a row. This guy is insanely popular, and everyone is shocked when they realize that the stone they are looking for is attached to the champion belt Kelvin is wearing. Kelvin thanks his supporters for cheering him on, and he explains to a trainer that it is his job as a fist fighter to create excitement for the tournament. The trainer can tell that Kelvin still is in good health, but Kelvin says that he will just be happy if he can find a worthy opponent. Just then Rick enters the gym and explains that adventurers are looking for a certain gem. Bruston wants to get right to the point, and Kelvin is shocked by his appearance. Rick says that they need to follow proper procedures when speaking to a stranger, but Bruston says that he isn't the type. Bruston tells Kelvin to give him the belt, and Rick has to clear things up by explaining that they aren't thieves. Bruston explains that the gem on the belt used to belong to their party. Bruston says that they will return the belt and give him an equivalent gem in exchange. The trainer plans to throw them out, but Kelvin stops him. Kelvin explains that he has a good nose, and he can tell that they aren't lying. While Kelvin does believe them, he cannot allow them to take the belt. The belt is the pride of the people of Heractopia, and the only way for them to get the belt is by standing at the top of the King of Fists tournament. Bruston surprisingly agrees with him, and they leave. The trainer wonders why Kelvin just let them leave because he wanted to let their rookie fighters beat them up. Kelvin explains that everyone would have lost their lives if they tried to fight Rick and his group. The trainer is shocked because he had no clue that they were that strong. Kelvin could tell that while the mate seemed very calm, she had incredible skills. Rick was also unremarkable looking, but Kelvin could sense that he had trained his body to an extraordinary degree. Rick doesn't emit the powerful aura, so Kelvin considers his total strength to be unknown. As for the orc, Kelvin is excited because he is the real deal. Nearby Bruston explains that the new plan is to become fist fighters so they can win the King of Fists tournament. To enter the tournament, they will first have to pass some preliminaries on either the east or west side of the kingdom, and then go against those who qualified. Bruston decides to enter through the Eastern League, and he instructs Rick to enter through the West. Rick wonders if Bruston will be okay on his own, so Bruston explains that he has already arranged to have a guide. This guide turns out to be Gold. Afterwards, Rionette explains that Rick must pass a test to become a fighter before anything. Tons of people from around the world take this test in the hope of obtaining glory, and Rick says that it sounds like fun. The first test is a physical mock battle, and opponents are selected at random. Rick's opponent is a promising newbie who has won each of their bouts in the tournament preliminaries. Winning or losing isn't important, because participants can still pass as long as they meet a certain standard. Just then Rick is shocked to recognize the voice of his opponent, and it turns out to be Angelica. Angelica makes her grand entrance, but she is horrified to see Rick. The small audience cheers her on, and they predict that she will quickly destroy Rick. Rick fears that Raster is there as well, but Angelica explains that she came alone. Angelica thinks about how bad things are for her, since her opponent is the old guy that beat her A-rank brother. Even winning doesn't matter right now. Angelica refuses to suffer defeat in a mock battle. Rick still doesn't look very strong to her, but Angelica doesn't plan to let her guard down like last time. The test begins, and Angelica vows to go all out right from the start this time. Angelica says the name of her powerful attack, but she instantly falls to the ground. Angelica thinks she just lost her balance, but she falls again. Rick stands over her and wonders what she thinks about this new skill he has learned in the last few months. Angelica is shocked to hear that he has been knocking her down, and Rick explains that this skill is called the 8 holdback technique. Secret number 1 is continually sweeping the legs of his opponent to demoralize them. Angelica is horrified because this means that Rick has been sweeping her legs so fast that even a 9th second class can't see it. Angelica doesn't believe that such a skill could exist, but it is entirely possible when it comes to Rick. Angelica creates some distance between them, but Rick once again just knocks her down. Rick keeps doing it, but Angelica says that this isn't nearly enough to make her give up. Then Rick decides to fight seriously, so Angelica's bluff is called, and she surrenders. Rick is a fighter now, so he heads to the qualifier. However, just then, Angelica stops him to wonder how many times he plans to humiliate her. Rick doesn't want her to cry, so he offers to take her to get something to eat. Militia's parents own the restaurant, so Militia tells them to just relax and enjoy some freebies. Angelica is shocked to hear that Rick plans to win the King of Fist tournament, because it sounds like a crazy dream. Angelica became a fighter 4 months ago, and she plans to enter the tournament as well. Angelica thought that Rick was going to try to win the tournament next year, but she was shocked that Rick wanted to win this year's tournament. Angelica says that Rick's power strains the bounds of logic, but she is sure that it won't be possible for him to win. Angelica explains that the path to the King of Fists tournament is a long one. First of all, only those who win 40 bouts over the half year of preliminaries earn the right to participate in the league competition. Rick thinks that all he has to do is win a bunch, but it is not that simple. The fights are extremely brutal, so most people fight 10 bouts per month. There is only 1 week left, and winning 40 bouts in just 1 week is physically impossible. Rick is shocked to hear this, because he thought that 10 fights a day would be easy, so Rick requested to have 40 bouts in 4 days. Angelica is horrified, and she wishes Rick would stop breaking the laws of common sense. The next day Rick goes to have his first preliminary bout. Rick's opponent is someone named Albert, but he is told that there are rumors about Albert breaking the rules by using a weapon. No evidence was found during body checks, so Rick is just told to be careful. Rick faces off against this guy, and is glad to see that he doesn't have a weapon. However, we see that Albert has a hidden stone that increases the force of his attacks by 30 times. The fight begins and Albert uses his coat to obstruct Rick's vision. His attack is powerful, and Albert declares his victory. It's too soon, as the pain from his broken arm eventually kicks in. Rick sees the impact stone and points out that it will break its user's bones if they haven't trained hard enough. Albert thinks about how he did train, but it is too late as Rick declares that it is his turn to attack. Rick uses secret number 2 from his 8 holdback technique, which is a skill that uses the shock wave from a passing punch to shake his opponent's brain and cause unconsciousness. The point of his 8 secrets is to win the fight without causing major injury to his opponents, and everyone is shocked to witness it. Albert is out cold, so Rick is announced as the winner. One guy is glad to see someone so powerful, and he determines that this year's tournament will be one for the ages. Elsewhere, we get a look at some fearsome monster-looking guy, and he is told that it's nearly time to get to work. So now what will happen next? Subscribe to our channel to find out what will happen next. So friends, if you liked our recap video, then please like and share this video and do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.